Hey there, it's Karenology. If you think you've heard it all, wait until you hear this wild story. I came back from fishing, just after 6 in the evening, boat humming softly as I cut through the still water. The sky above the trees was bruised purple, the kind that tells you the day is dying slow. My arms ached, not from the weight of the catch. I hadn't caught a damn thing, but from the silence. I was still getting used to it even after 5 years. Just me and the lake now. But when I rounded the bend by the willow tree, something was wrong. I saw movement on my land. Figures, tents, a flatbed truck, and music, God help me, cheap party music thumping across the water like a slap. I cut the motor, drifted in. My pier, the one I built with my own hands and reinforced after every spring thaw, was crowded with folding chairs and a half-assembled canopy. A banner lay coiled like a snake across the dock. Summer Lake Celebration, hosted by the Community Association. My boots thudded against the dock as I climbed out. A woman I recognized, Karen Wallace, president of the Homeowner Association, turned at the sound. She wore a floral blouse too tight for her shoulders and held a clipboard like a badge. She smiled like she was doing me a favor. "Oh, good, you're here. We were just setting up for tonight. It'll be a lovely event." I stared at her. "On my dock?" She blinked, all sweet and slow. "Well, technically, Mr. Granger, the lake and surrounding areas are part of the community zone now. You must have received our notice." I hadn't. Nobody had asked. Nobody had knocked. Nobody had called. "Move it all, now." Karen's face twitched, just for a second. "I'm afraid the permits are already secured. We reviewed county maps. Your boundary ends just before the shoreline. This event's been approved." Behind her, 2 men in polo shirts were unloading boxes of catered food. A speaker was hooked up to a portable generator. Already buzzing, my eyes fixed on the old oak stump by the shoreline. The spot where I buried my wife's ashes in a tin box, sealed with our initials. "Get off my land," I said, voice low, steady. The way I used to talk to wild dogs that wandered too close. Karen didn't budge. One of the guys chuckled. That sound did something to me. I felt it in my spine. I took a step forward, but something held me back. I don't know what. Maybe age. Maybe knowing how things spiral when you act from rage. Maybe the fact that every eye was on me now, waiting to see the old man crack. Karen leaned in. "You really want to ruin this for everyone? For the neighborhood kids? For the veterans we invited? We're building community, Mr. Granger. Don't be difficult." And just like that, she turned, shouting orders to someone about ice coolers. I stood there for a long while people walked past me carrying chairs, balloons, crates of drinks, like I was a ghost on my own land. That night, from my porch, I watched them party. I didn't light the lantern. I just sat in the dark, counting the number of times someone laughed where they shouldn't have. Someone trampled through the hydrangeas Mary planted. One couple even set up a hammock between the trees we planted the year we bought the property. I could feel something cracking inside me. Not rage, something quieter, more dangerous. When the fireworks went off, I flinched. They were too close to the pine ridge. Embers floated over my roof. I didn't sleep. By morning, they were gone. But the trash wasn't. The dock sagged from the weight it took. The flower bed was flattened, and the banner was still there, flapping in the breeze like a flag of conquest. The next day, I went to the association office. They wouldn't let me past the front desk. Karen appeared from a glass door, clipboard in hand again, and said with a smile, "If you'd like to contest the community usage designation, you'll need to file with the county in triplicate. And I should warn you, it's quite a backlog." She winked, like we were sharing a joke. I left, went back home, pried the dock boards loose one by one. Not all of them, just enough to make it a problem. Let's see how they like their party when the floor gives out. But even that didn't stop them. Next weekend, they were back, and they brought reinforcements. This time, I didn't go down to meet them. I sat inside, watched from behind the curtains, and when the music started again, I poured myself a glass of something stronger than patience. They had no idea what they'd started, and I didn't know yet how far I was willing to go. But I'd find out soon enough. I didn't speak to anyone for 3 days. Not even to Margot, the woman who bags my groceries and always asks about the lake, like it's some kind of local fairy tale. I kept to myself, tending to things that didn't need tending. Repainting the tool shed door, sharpening the same set of hedge clippers over and over. It's funny what a man does when he's trying not to snap. By the time Friday rolled around, I had half a mind to just disappear. Take the truck, drive west till the road forgot my name. But then I saw them again. A new group. This time, it wasn't just the usual retirees with their wine coolers and string lights. These were younger, loud. Someone was blasting music with bass so deep it shook the kitchen window. I stepped out on the porch and counted 5 tents already staked into my lawn. They'd set up a pop-up bar under the willow. My willow. Mary used to sit under that tree and read when the sun was low. Now it was covered in LED lights, and some guy was yelling into a megaphone about raffle tickets. I walked straight down without thinking. This time, I didn't even put on my boots. Just stomped across the wet grass in my socks, heart punching my ribs. A man with mirrored sunglasses and a fake tan tried to stop me. He put a hand on my chest like we were in some club line. "You need credentials, old man." I knocked his hand away and kept going. People turned. Some laughed. One woman pointed her phone at me. I could hear her whisper, "That's him! The crazy lake guy." I made it to the bar. Karen was there, of course, holding court like some damn lakeside queen. She had a headset mic on and was telling a story about collaborative neighborhood spirit. I grabbed the mic off her face, just pulled the wire. She yelped and stumbled. I don't recall inviting you," I said. Karen straightened, brushing her blouse like that made her powerful. "And I don't recall needing your permission, Mr. Granger. Your hostility is duly noted." She turned to the crowd and said, smiling, "Let's all remember, this is about joy. Let's not let one person ruin it." They applauded. Honest to God, applauded. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a theater I didn't buy a ticket to, watching someone else play my part. That night, I sat by the old garden shed, chain smoking. Something I hadn't done in decades. My chest ached, not from the smoke, but from the feeling I was watching my whole damn life get repainted in someone else's colors. The next morning, a deputy knocked on my door. His name tag said Burns. He was young, nervous, and trying hard to seem neutral. Got a call from the community association. said you made physical contact with one of the guests. I moved his hand off my chest. Burns scratched his neck. Well, they filed a formal complaint. Nothing serious right now. But if there's a pattern... A pattern? He shifted. Just be mindful, sir. They've got a lot of documentation. Of course they do. He left without giving me a citation, but the message was clear. I was now officially on the list. The crank. The threat. The unstable relic who might lash out. I poured myself a glass of water. It tasted like copper. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the wall where Mary's photos still hung. Her, in that faded blue dress, barefoot by the lake. I remember the day I took it. She was laughing. I was 35 and thought I had forever. Funny thing is, forever feels like a lie you don't realize until it's gone. Now it was just me, the trees, and a dozen strangers tap dancing on the last sacred spot I had left. I sat in the shed for hours, turning over old boxes, looking for something I wasn't even sure existed. I found it under the tarp, next to the rusted fishing rods and paint cans. The land deed. The original one, with boundaries drawn by hand. The lines were different, marked in faded pen. The boundary stretched farther than the modern map showed, including the entire eastern shoreline. I made some calls. The county office confirmed what I already suspected. They'd used a new digital map system to update lots 5 years ago, and minor overlaps were automatically reconciled. Reconciled my ass. I needed help, but not from a lawyer in town. I needed someone who knew how to fight back without going through the front door. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 10 years. He picked up on the second ring. Matt Foster speaking. I exhaled slowly. You still know how to cause trouble legally? A pause. Then a chuckle. Ray Granger. Been a while. What did they do to you? Come by, I said. And bring whiskey. We've got a war to plan. Matt showed up the next day in a dented Silverado that coughed black smoke and had a bumper sticker that read, "Old lawyers never die. They just lose their appeal." He hadn't changed much. Grayer, maybe, with deeper lines around his eyes, but the same crooked smirk and shoulders that leaned forward like he was always about to say something sarcastic. He didn't bother with small talk. We sat on the porch, coffee in one hand, printouts of the deed in the other. He traced the old boundaries with a pen, nodding slowly. So, let me get this straight, he said, squinting at the map. They used a newer county system, which digitally trimmed your plot by about 20 feet on the east side. That 20 feet includes your dock, your shoreline, and the willow, everything Mary loved. He looked at me, quietly, then nodded again, and they threw a party on it twice. 3 times now, he whistled low. Well, Ray, they just woke the bear. Question is, how do you want to maul 'em? I didn't smile, but my fingers twitched around the mug. I want them to regret stepping foot near that lake. I want her to lose more than face. Matt leaned back. We can't go through the front door. That'd take months. County red tape is a spider web. They'll just crawl out while you're stuck. So we go side entrance. Find something they missed. Something they'd never expect. We spent the day digging. Matt had access to databases, old case records, even a few back channels he didn't care to explain. I didn't ask. Trust is strange when it's built on shared bitterness. He called it the quiet network. I called it desperation. By nightfall, we had a lead. Ray, you remember that maintenance lot on the north side? The one nobody uses anymore? I nodded. Belonged to the pump station? Exactly. It was never officially annexed into the association. And guess what's on that lot? Tell me. He grinned. The access switch to the water control system. Old school manual valve. Still functional? My stomach flipped. You're saying if someone had ownership over that lot, they'd technically control the lake's inflow and outflow. They'd control the level. I sat there, stunned. That switch had been rusting since before Mary died. The county forgot about it. HOA definitely never claimed it. Is it for sale? Matt was already dialing. Let's find out. 2 days later, we had the paperwork. It wasn't cheap, but it was fast. Matt knew who to call, how to grease the right palms without leaving stains. On paper, the Granger property now included the maintenance lot and the access point. Now comes the fun part, Matt said. Timing. We waited. I didn't sleep much that week. I walked the property at night like a ghost. I remembered Mary's laughter under the willow, her hands in the soil, the way she used to hum when the wind blew across the lake. I could still hear it, but it was getting drowned out by music, by strangers, by Karen's smug voice echoing across the water like some twisted hymn. Saturday came. The big event. I knew it was big because they brought in portable bathrooms and a stage. Not just a party. This was something bigger. HOA banners everywhere. A PA system. Folding chairs lined up like pews. Matt stood beside me in the shed, sipping black coffee. You sure? I nodded. My heart wasn't pounding. It was still. Ice water still. I hadn't felt that in years. Not since the war. We waited until the mayor arrived. That's when Karen stepped up to the mic, grinning like she'd won something. Matt slipped me a set of keys. Top lever opens the valve. Turn slow. You don't want a flood. Just a lesson. I walked the back trail, around the pine bluff, down to the rusted hatch. It creaked like an old coffin. Inside, cobwebs, spiders, dust, and the wheel. Thick iron, cold in my hands. I turned it. 15 minutes later, I was back on the porch, and the water was dropping. It wasn't fast, but it was visible. The dock tilted. The boats bumped against mud. The stage listing sideways. People started murmuring. Karen's voice on the mic cracked. Just a minor technical issue. Nothing to worry about. Whiny, nozzle, but people were worrying. They moved back. Some ran. Someone screamed when the speakers sparked. The fancy string lights flickered out like fireflies caught in a jar. I just sat there. And Matt, beside me, muttered, "Welcome to Sunday school." The lake didn't drain fully. I wasn't there to ruin it. Just to remind them who they were messing with. But the message had been sent. And Karen? Her face told me she'd just lost control of more than a shoreline. By Sunday afternoon, the calls started. First from the association's voicemail system, then from numbers I didn't recognize. Messages ranged from polite concern to thinly veiled threats. Karen's voice stood out among them all, brittle and forced. "Mr. Granger, what you did was reckless and potentially dangerous. There will be consequences. Matt just raised an eyebrow when I played it for him. Let her panic, he said. That's when people make mistakes. He was right. By Tuesday, she'd sent a cease and desist letter, drafted in bad legalese by their community council, demanding immediate reversal of any intentional environmental tampering. Matt read it aloud, chuckling through half of it. What do we do? I asked. We ignore it, he said. She's bluffing, and now she's desperate. But I wasn't laughing. I was tired. Not physically. Something deeper. That kind of tired that comes from fighting not just people, but memory. Fighting time. That night, I sat by the tree where Mary used to garden. Her roses were gone now, stomped by folding chairs and coolers. I found one of her old gloves buried under a layer of mulch and party trash. I held it in my lap for a long while. Then I took it inside, cleaned it and placed it in a shadow box frame. Hung it right next to her photo. This isn't about dirt, I whispered. It's about what's left. By midweek, things changed. Karen didn't retreat. She doubled down. A security guard appeared near the lake entrance. Private hire. Dressed like a cop, dark sunglasses, earpiece. When I approached, he told me the association had a temporary lease on the shoreline during events, and his job was to protect community resources. Matt went ballistic. That's intimidation, Ray. And illegal as hell. Let her keep pushing, I said. Let's see what she shows us next. Karen made her next move the following Saturday. They held another event. Some kind of summer gala. This time, they brought a professional film crew. Drones in the air. Stage shots. A whole PR campaign to paint the lake as a triumph of community spirit. I wasn't even mad. I was fascinated. She's building a campaign, Matt muttered. This isn't about HOA anymore. She's aiming higher. Council? Maybe county commissioner. Karen was playing for power. The lake was her symbol, and I was the villain in her story. Then something happened I didn't expect. A reporter showed up. Not from a major outlet, just a local freelancer. Said he was doing a piece on small-town revitalization. He asked if I wanted to comment. I said no, not because I didn't have something to say, but because words weren't enough anymore. Instead, I walked him to the old boathouse. Showed him the collapsed wall, the trash, the broken swing Mary used to sit on. Didn't say a word. He nodded, took a photo, and left. 2 days later, the story ran. Headline was neutral, but the photos weren't. One image, just my hand holding Mary's gardening glove, ran full width under the fold. I didn't ask for sympathy, but I felt it shift. In town, at the store, at the diner, people stopped calling me crazy. They started calling me Sir. But Karen? She spun it. Said I was using grief to weaponize property law. That I was dangerous. That my emotional instability posed a risk. And then came the petition. Official request to place a behavioral injunction against me, citing public endangerment, verbal aggression, and obstruction of community functions. I stood in my kitchen, the paper in my hand shaking. She was trying to bury me. Matt read it. It's a move to isolate you. Cut you off legally from your own land. If the court sides with her, they could ban you from events within 100 feet of the shoreline. You think she'll win? He looked at me, then away. If we play by their rules, Maybe. We sat in silence. I thought about the willow tree, about Mary's ashes beneath it, about the sweat I poured into every nail on that dock. She wants a symbol, I said. She wants to stand on that dock and point at the lake and say she made it safe. Clean. Controlled. Matt leaned forward. So what do we take from her? I answered without thinking, her stage. He grinned. I didn't. We had 1 week before the court hearing. 7 days. Enough time to make her regret ever laying eyes on this land. We didn't waste a second. Matt set up shop in my kitchen. Papers spread across the table like a battlefield map. I could barely see the wood under all the deeds, permits, and hand-sketched blueprints. He scribbled legal notes with one hand and sipped burnt coffee with the other. His pen never stopped moving. Neither did his mouth. Yes, here's what we do, he said. We file an emergency motion, not to stop the injunction, but to stall it. Then we trigger the environmental clause buried in their own community charter, the one about unauthorized infrastructure within 30 feet of a wetland buffer zone. I raised an eyebrow. The stage. Exactly. It's illegal. They built it without soil inspection clearance. If we cite it before they do, we flip the narrative. You're not the obstructionist. You're the conservationist. I almost laughed. You're telling me I'm going to save the environment to save my dock? Matt grinned. Ray, sometimes the law's just a mirror. You decide what it reflects. By Wednesday, we had a packet an inch thick. Filed it at the county office ourselves. No email, no fax. We handed it over, face to face, to the clerk with the kind of smile that says, yes, we're serious. But paperwork was just one front. I had something else in mind, something quieter. Late that night, I walked the perimeter of the lake. Not the parts I owned, but the ones they forgot about. The brush line behind the event field. The slope behind the maintenance lot. I left flags, markers, a trail. Thursday morning, Karen held a press tour. Invited donors, local press, even a few out-of-town real estate types. She wore a tailored jacket and a microphone. Gave a whole speech about revitalizing forgotten spaces. That's when the county inspector arrived. Right in the middle of her pitch, a city truck pulled up, and out stepped a woman in boots and a yellow vest. Clipboard in hand, she asked to speak with the site manager. Karen looked like she swallowed a lemon. I watched from the tree line. They walked the grounds, measured the stage, took photos. The inspector pointed toward the willow and shook her head. Karen tried to argue, tried to charm. None of it landed. An hour later, the inspector posted a red tag. Temporary structure violation. Order to dismantle. The stage was condemned. No appeals until after the hearing. Matt called it a minor miracle, but I knew better. It wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to take no for an answer. Sure enough, that night, a black SUV pulled up across my drive. 2 men in suits stepped out. Not cops. Not locals. Private security, real this time. One approached the porch, hand resting near his waist like he expected trouble. You're Mr. Granger? I stayed seated. Depends on who's asking. He held out a sealed envelope. You've been served. Isn't that the sheriff's job? We're expedited delivery. They left without another word. Inside was a cease and desist but not from the association. This one came from a corporate entity. Lakeshore Future Holdings, LLC. Matt read it 3 times before speaking. That's a shell company. She's hiding her donors. This isn't just about a lake anymore, Ray. This is about development. Big money. I stood in silence, watching the trees sway outside the window, like old men whispering secrets. She wants to privatize the whole thing, turn it into a resort. That's why the events, the cameras, the speeches, she's grooming the place. Matt nodded grimly. She's turning your home into a brochure. I sat down. The weight of it hit like wet cement. Mary's garden, the swing, the dock, our memories. Repackaged for weekenders. Matt leaned forward. We need to hit back. Not just legally, visibly. If she wants symbols, we give her one. I looked at him. What kind? He grinned. The kind they can't ignore. That night, I pulled out my old welding kit. Still rusted from the years, but it sparked up with enough fire to remind me who I used to be. By morning, Karen's stage was intact, but by sundown, someone had welded every anchor bolt to the concrete footers. Permanent. Immovable. A stage without release? Matt just whistled when he saw it. She's going to scream, he said. I didn't reply. I just sat on my porch, waiting for the sound. It didn't take long. By noon the next day, Karen's voice cracked across the lake like a siren. She stood in front of the stage with a crew of contractors in orange vests, all of them scratching their heads, tugging uselessly at the welded bolts. I watched from the porch, sipping my coffee. She barked orders, called someone on her phone, paced in circles. The sun was high, and her floral blouse clung to her back like a flag of surrender. But she didn't stop. Couldn't. Because now every eye was on her. Her donors, her community, her people. Matt showed up an hour later with a grin and a box of donuts. You hear her screaming from here? I can hear her thinking. He handed me a jelly-filled one. Tomorrow's the hearing. You ready? No. He sat beside me. Me neither. We didn't say much after that. The silence said enough. That night, I walked down to the dock. No music, no lights, no laughter. Just water lapping at the edge, moonlight crawling across the ripples. I knelt by the willow and pressed my hand to the earth. It felt warm, as if it remembered. Last push, Mary, I whispered. Then I'll rest. The next morning, I wore my old army jacket. Not for show, just for the weight. Sometimes you need something heavy on your shoulders to keep your spine straight. The hearing was held in the municipal building downtown. A beige room with cheap carpet and folding chairs, already packed when we arrived. Karen sat near the front, flanked by 2 lawyers in charcoal suits and a man I recognized from one of the contractor trucks. I took my seat beside Matt. He nudged me. Don't say a word unless asked. Let the paper speak. I nodded. The judge was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a sharp voice. She opened the session by reviewing the petition. Karen's attempt to bar me from my own shoreline. Then Matt stood. He was calm, precise. He read from the association's own charter, pointed to the environmental violation, referenced the inspector's findings, and laid out the chain of ownership for the maintenance lot and valve. The judge followed, flipping through the stack. Then Karen's lawyer stood and did what lawyers do best. Deflected, denied, dramatized. He called me aggressive, unstable, a threat to public safety. Said I'd acted with malice. Did Mr. Granger weld the stage anchors to the foundation? He demanded. Matt didn't flinch. You'd have to ask him. But unless your stage has legs and walks itself off the buffer zone, I don't see how it's his responsibility. There was a low chuckle in the back row. Karen stood up, unprompted. This man has sabotaged our efforts to build something beautiful. He's scared of change, clings to his dead wife's memory like it gives him the right to own nature itself. Gasps. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. I didn't move. I just looked at her. And I think that silence did more damage than anything I could have said. Matt leaned over and whispered, "That did it." The judge called for a recess. When she returned, she didn't look at either side. Just read the decision. Petition denied. No behavioral injunction. Association cited for code violation. Order to remove stage within 5 days. Karen froze. Her jaw clenched. One of her lawyers leaned in, whispering urgently. She pushed him away. Matt patted my shoulder. We won. But it didn't feel like winning. Outside, the air smelled like asphalt and cigarettes. I sat on the curb, arms on my knees. Matt stood nearby, checking his phone. You okay? Yeah, just tired. You should be proud. Not many people could have... I cut him off. She's not done. Not yet. And I was right. That night I came home to find the willow tree stripped, branches cut, bark slashed, and note nailed to the trunk. A single word, all caps. Mine. I didn't call the cops. I sat down at the base of the tree, held the bark in my hands, and closed my eyes. Let her think she won a round. Because now I wasn't fighting for property. I was fighting for memory, for Mary, and I wasn't planning to lose again. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because of clarity. There's a kind of quiet that settles in a man when the war stops being about land or titles or rules. When it becomes personal. At dawn, I took the note from the willow and burned it in a rusted coffee can. Watched the paper curl and blacken until it was just dust and memory. Then I grabbed a shovel. I spent the next 6 hours digging around the tree. Careful, methodical. I unearthed the metal box that held Mary's ashes, sealed tight and wrapped in the same silk I folded with shaking hands the day I buried her there. My knees buckled when I held it. I didn't cry. That had been burned out of me years ago. But something inside me settled, hardened. I took her with me, placed the box on the mantel beneath her photo, let her watch what would come next. Matt arrived that afternoon. I showed him the damage, the scarred bark, the nail holes. He didn't ask who did it. We both knew. She's escalating, he said. She wants you angry, wants you to slip. Then let's not give her that satisfaction. We didn't talk strategy that day. We sat on the porch, drank cheap whiskey, and watched the sun bleed across the lake. Silence stretched long, like we were waiting for something to break. It did. Next morning, the surveyors came. Not city, private. Young guys in neon vests and mirrored sunglasses. They walked the perimeter with drones and laser scopes, planting little plastic flags like they owned the place. I asked them who hired them. They said, Lakeshore Future Holdings. So that was it. She wasn't just posturing anymore. She was drawing new lines, preparing to annex the land outright. Matt filed an injunction the same day, but legal delays meant weeks, maybe months. We didn't have that kind of time. We need leverage, Matt muttered, pacing my kitchen. Something that stops them now, not later. I looked at the map, at the maintenance lot, at the old valve system. What if we don't stop them? I said. He blinked. Come again? And what if we let them finish the survey? Let them build. Let them commit. Ray, and then we pull the plug. Literally. He stared at me, then slowly smiled. It wasn't just revenge. It was strategy. We let them get comfortable. Over the next 4 days, the activity ramped up. Trucks came and went. Stakes were hammered into soil that had held my boot prints for 30 years. A prefab structure was delivered on a flatbed. Karen herself marched down the hill in a business suit, flanked by 3 men in ties, pointing, directing. She didn't even look at my house. I stayed quiet, calm, until Friday. That morning, I walked down to the valve. It took effort. The wheel hadn't been turned in weeks. But I managed. Not a full drain, just enough to destabilize the foundation of the structure they were installing. The lake edge dipped. Mud rose like a warning. By afternoon, one of the contractors yelled something about shifted load bearing and unstable slope. Karen stormed across the field, heels sinking into soft ground. She shouted into her phone, waved at the crew. I watched from the willow, arms crossed. Matt stood beside me. She'll try to sue. She'll lose. She'll try to spin it. She'll fail. The structure listed to one side, crooked and sinking. The crane operator refused to move another inch. By nightfall, they'd abandoned the job site. The lake was calm again, but something was still coming. I could feel it. And this time, I knew it wouldn't be legal. This time, it would be personal. And I was ready. I wasn't wrong. The knock came just after midnight. Not the polite kind. The kind that rattles the door frame. I opened it with the safety on the shotgun still clicked into place. Not raised. Just visible. Karen stood there, alone. No clipboard. No security. Just her, wrapped in a raincoat slick from the storm. Mascara running like ink down porcelain. Her expression was something I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not triumph, desperation. You need to stop, she said. I didn't answer. Just stepped aside and let her see the photo of Mary over the mantel. The urn beneath. The glove in the shadow box. She swallowed. This isn't just about you anymore. They're going to take it. All of it. With or without you. I leaned on the doorframe. So now you're not leading the charge? You're just collateral. Yeah. Her voice cracked. You don't understand who these people are. Try me. She looked away. Lakeshore isn't just a holding company. It's backed by a development fund out of New York. They bought up tracts across 3 counties. Yours is just a keystone. If they lose this, the whole plan crumbles. Then I'll make sure it does. She took a step forward, pleading. They don't care about court rulings. They don't care about charters. They'll come in at night with backhoes and bulldozers. They'll pay the fines later. I nodded slowly. So, you came here to warn me? Or to beg me to fold? I came here because I didn't know where else to go. That's when I saw it. Not fear. Shame. She turned to leave. Wait, I said. She stopped. Tell me where they're storing the plans. Karen blinked. What? The blueprints, the survey maps, the investment docs. They've got a central office, right? She hesitated. Then, softly, "It's in a trailer behind the Ridgeview lot. White one. No signage. 2 guards. No cameras." I nodded. "Thanks." She left without another word. By morning, the trailer was gone. They'd moved it. Matt cursed under his breath when I told him. "They're flushing everything. Going dark. Getting ready to push through fast." That afternoon, the sheriff came by. Said he'd received complaints about tampering with municipal infrastructure. He didn't arrest me, just delivered the message. We were out of time, so we flipped the board. Matt made some calls. I made some too. Old names, old friends. The kind of folks who don't ask why. One of them was a drone pilot out of Jackson. Another, a surveyor who hated corporate development with a near-religious passion. By evening, we had aerial footage. Clear, high-res shots of unauthorized excavation beyond zoning lines. Trucks parked where no permit existed. Concrete footings poured near protected routes. We weren't taking it to the papers. We took it to the bank. Lakeshore had filed for a construction loan through a local partner branch. That branch had policies, strict ones. Violation of environmental law triggered automatic audit suspension. Matt walked in with a manila envelope and a button shirt for once. 48 hours later, the loan froze. The job stopped. And Karen? She disappeared, not vanished. Just quiet. Her house dark. Her name gone from the HOA board site. No calls, no presence, until the sign went up. For sale. Right on her lawn. Matt and I stood across the street, watching as a moving truck swallowed her belongings piece by piece. "Think that's the end of it?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not yet, because victory doesn't feel like silence. It feels like clarity." And I was starting to see the shape of something bigger, something final. One more move, and I'd make it count. Wayne Otper, The sky was iron gray that morning. Flat and heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Matt showed up without calling, thermos in hand, his usual smirk replaced by something quieter. "You sure about this?" I took the thermos and nodded. "It ends today." The field was empty now. No trucks, no contractors, just tire tracks and silence. A stage welded into the earth like a monument to a war nobody wanted. We walked the perimeter once more, not to inspect, but to remember. The places Mary planted roses, the bench we built when we first moved in, the low spot in the yard where she used to watch the sunset with her head on my shoulder. Ghosts in every corner. None of them angry, just waiting. I'd spent weeks preparing this. The final move wasn't about force. It wasn't about the courts or the banks or the paperwork. It was about ownership. Not just of land, but of narrative. Matt helped me carry the crate down to the dock. Inside, 3 things. A vintage reel-to-reel recorder. A rusted sign that read, "Granger's Land. No trespassing." And a bundle of documents. The original deed, the revised surveys, photos of Mary planting the willow, the environmental citations against the association, and a notarized letter from Karen. We set it all up right on the dock. Then, while the lake sat still and watching, I hit record. My voice cracked once, then steadied. I spoke plainly. Not to fight, not to win, but to mark the truth. I told the story from the start, about the lake, about Mary, about the people who tried to erase something sacred. I spoke names, spoke dates. I let silence sit where it needed to. Let the wind carry the rest. When it was done, We packed the recording into a weatherproof box, sealed it with resin, and buried it beneath the old bench. We placed the sign next to it, not for them, for whoever came next. Matt said nothing the whole time, just stood with his hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the water. On the way back, I stopped at Karen's house. Empty now. Windows shuttered. For sale signs still leaning crooked in the dirt. I hammered a note to the post. It said, "You were never the villain. Just the warning." Then I left. By evening, the clouds finally broke. Rain fell soft and steady, soaking the earth without fury. I sat on the porch, wrapped in Mary's old blanket, and watched the willow sway again for the first time since the bark had been cut. They didn't win. Not really, because sometimes victory isn't about what you keep. It's about what you protect long enough to pass on. The lake was quiet. The land was mine. And I was ready to let it go, but not forget, never forget.